Hello, Rita.
Hi, Amanda.
How are you?
I'm doing good. We sound a little weird because we took a break.
Yeah, we've taken a couple weeks off.
And we're trying to get back into it, but we're both are extremely busy. Mm-hmm. So if we're a little lackluster, there's a reason.
So if you're just joining us and you've never, ever listened to this podcast before, this is...
I don't know her.
The podcast where we talk about women you probably don't know, but you should.
And you will.
So I got to tell you... Mine is intense today.
Really? Like intense in a good way, or am I going to cry? Because FYI, I'm ragging right now. I already cried in the shower this morning. I was listening to like some Sia song, and I was like...
Was it Chandelier?
Oh, it was... Oh, I don't even know. I think it was Breathe.
Oh.
I know. Look that song up. It's really good.
Yeah.
It made me cry.
I love Sia.
Have always had a hard time of letting myself cry, and I've been getting better at just letting it happen. So I cried in the shower today, and it was a good thing.
I cry all the time. When I was younger, I was like, crying is for girls. I'm not a girly girl, which is a stupid thing to say and a super anti-feminist.
Absolutely.
But when I was young, I saw crying as weakness, mm-hmm. right? And now I'm like, no. Let it fly. Let those tears fall.
Well, it feels so much better. And I have always held it in, like bitten my lip, like literally bitten my lip till I've bled because I don't want to make any noise and I don't want to cry. But it keeps like creeping up all day long. And it feels like you shook up a soda bottle and all the pressure's building up. So I just cried and let it out. I feel better. I feel like it was a release.
I cry at like commercials.
Oh, yeah.
I cry at everything. I got teary-eyed and all misty-eyed at that Christmas luncheon. So I was just telling Rita about how on Thursday, I work at a new school this year, so I'm new to everything. And there's this tradition where the kids come and perform for us as we eat at a special fancy table. Like it's white linens and the kids come and serenade you. Like literally... There was this boy. So there's this group called the Strolling Strings, and they literally walk around while they play. And these four of them come to like the four. It's a round table, so it's not really corners, but sort of like diagonal X. Mm-hmm. And then they kneel next to you and they play.
Oh my goodness!
It was so sweet.
And
I was
charming.
Just like looking around, and I was like, they're so talented, and this is so sweet. And like all these kids are like, Miss Me, can I refill your water? Can I get you more, can I get you a dessert? Can I give you some coffee? Like it's just so adorable. Mm-hmm. And the kids are like washing the dishes and they're, it's just neat. The whole thing was really cool. And I was like, okay. Yeah, I was definitely a little teary, almost sobbing.
Oh my gosh. I would have been there inappropriate, but then I would have been like biting my lip.
I just thought it was so sweet. And I love that kind of stuff when...
That is sweet. It's kind.
And when genuine. Kids are like really putting themselves out there, even though they obviously are embarrassed as fuck. Can you imagine being a teenager wearing a polyester choir dress? And having to serenade your teachers?
My goodness.
All right, well, we should probably get moving on our ladies.
So you were saying intense in like a as good in way, or this girl seen some shit?
Intense as in I have a trigger warning.
Ooh.
Yeah. So you tell me if you think I should go first or second.
Mine's a little more lighthearted.
So should we end on lighthearted? Probably. Mine is intense.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, let's end on lighthearted. Okay.
Right.
So
when you think your head's underwater, it's a breath of fresh air.
Okay, I am going to do Phoolan Devi, the Bandit Queen.
Don't know her.
So, trigger warning, this entire story has lots of rape in it.
Ooh.
And some violence and some murder.
Oh. Well, all those people I murdered.
Yeah.
It's all coming
So,
back.
I just for the listeners out there, like, I'm not going to go into detail about the rapes, but I will. I'm going to mention them, and if you're if you've had experiences and you're in a sensitive state, you may want to fast forward to Rita's.
Okay.
Okay. And also, all of the names in this are Indian, and I meant to do the thing where I go to YouTube and I search how to pronounce them, but I forgot. So, fingers crossed that I don't totally murder these names.
Yeah. And if we're getting anything wrong, just let us know. We'd be more than happy to correct it.
Phoolan Devi, the Bandit Queen. She was born August 10th, 1963, into the Malla caste, which is the caste, the caste system in India? Mm-mm. So they have still a very, stringent caste system where it's everybody falls into a social caste, and it's real classist, right?
Oh, okay. I understand.
So she's in the Malla caste, and those are boatmen, fishermen, which is pretty much the bottom of the barrel. So that means that she's the least wealthy and is really looked down upon in society, very, very denigrated as people.
Wow.
Don't have if you are from the Malla caste, people don't want to hire you. They think, it's just people have stereotypes based on their caste.
Okay. And once you're in this certain area, you can't move up.
It's very difficult.
Yeah. Okay.
And especially at this point, because there just wasn't a lot of social mobility, because you didn't have access to wealth, because people wouldn't hire you, and blah, blah, blah. So she's born in 1963 into the Malla caste in a small village of Gorakhpurwa. She's the fourth and also the youngest child of her parents, Mula and Devi Din Malla. Her family was very poor. They owned just 1 acre of farmland, and it wasn't conducive to growing crops. So they didn't have a lot of ways of making money. So when she's 10 years old, both of her paternal grandparents, or her father's parents, pass away, and her father's older brother becomes the head of the family. So Phoolan, she learns that her uncle and her cousin have gone in and falsified village land records so that they could steal her father's land.
Oh, shit.
So after the grandparents pass away, they go in and they're like, oh, no, he didn't get this in the will. So she confronts her cousin. So she's 10 years old. She confronts her cousin, and he's older than her, and she's taunting him in public in front of people. Right.
That's bold.
It is.
Yeah.
Because we also have this caste system going on, but we also have real stringent rules about what women are allowed to say and do, and this is not one of them. You are not to taunt a man in public.
Jeez.
So she had already kind of made a name for herself for having foul language. And so even at age 10, she's screaming at them in front of other people, and women and girls were not ever supposed to do that, especially because her uncle is the head of the family, which would mean that her cousin is above her. He would be anyway because he was male. Yeah. But even more so because her cousin is the descendant of the head of the household.
And she also is a little girl.
Yeah, he's 14, 15 or something, I think. So when he responded by berating her, she physically attacked him.
Oh, jeez.
Then once that didn't work, right, he fought her off. She goes and rounds up a whole bunch of village girls to protest, and they staged a sit-in on the land.
Oh my goodness.
A sit-in protest. She's a fucking badass already, right? She's 10 years old, and she's like, this ain't right. I'm going to stand up. So she gathers all these girls, and they're like, you're right, Phoolan, this is wrong. And they go and they do a sit-in protest on the land. And some of the family elders tried to literally drag her, and she refused to leave. So, trigger warning, her cousin and her uncle grab bricks, and they beat her until she's unconscious.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. In retaliation for this public humiliation that she's done to her uncle and cousin, as if the brick beating weren't enough. At age 11, they marry her off to a 45-year-old man.
Gross.
Yeah. And it's a widower, and he lives in a distant village, and they exchanged her for a cow and a bicycle. She's 11. He is 45.
Ugh.
Yeah. It's gross, guys.
Yeah.
Trigger warning number 2. So her husband frequently beat her and forced himself on her at the age of 11. And she repeatedly tried to run away from him, and he would catch her and bring her back. And he eventually was pissed about it. And he dropped her off at her parents' house and was like, I'm done with her. She's too much of a handful for me. And this is shortly after her 12th birthday.
Jeez.
Her parents look at her when she returns and he's dropped her off and he's pissed. Her parents look at her and see a disgraced woman. Mm-hmm. They are pissed that she's there. Women are not supposed to leave their husbands. Mm-hmm. And the fact that she repeatedly tried to run away, it's a disgrace on the family. Her mother told her, literally, and there's an interview with her mother and her sister, her sisters, that was done in like 2014. And they literally said, her mother said this.
Wow.
So this is what her mom said. You have heaped disgrace on all of us. There is no alternative. You must commit suicide. Oh. Go jump in the village well.
Wow.
So at the age of 12, she was considered ruined.
Yeah.
Because she had had sex. Mm-hmm. But involuntarily. So she was already ruined by that. She'd left her husband. Like, she's the worst. Mm-hmm. So she develops this reputation for being promiscuous. Now, I'm not sure if the reputation is because she actually was promiscuous or if it was created, perceived because she had a husband who forced himself on her. So she's sent away to her sister's home village, and there she begins an affair with her distant and married cousin.
Oh.
And they run off to get married, but that doesn't work out. And he goes back to his first wife, and she once again returns to her family's home.
She's, hey.
Hi, guys. I know you didn't like me before, but you're really going to hate me now.
Jeez.
I tried to steal my cousin from his wife.
Oh, man.
Yikes. So her uncle and cousin are still fucking pissed at her from the stuff she did when she was 10. And this disgrace that she's heaped on the family because of the husband situation and because, she's promiscuous and because she had this affair with her older cousin. So her original uncle and cousin that beat her with the brick, they decide to seek revenge against her and accuse her of stealing small items from the uncle's house. And because he's relatively well connected in this small Mala village, she gets arrested and she's put in jail.
Man, that uncle sure likes to lie, doesn't he?
And I'm like, she is, again, she's maybe 14 at this point. She's a child. Mm-hmm. It's disgusting. So she actually spends weeks in police custody. Trigger warning. She is beaten and raped by the police, many of whom were friends of her uncle. And this was actually, so what I read was this was super commonplace for any woman who was jailed. For any reason.
I'm going to teach you a lesson and taking advantage of the situation of a woman in custody. Yeah.
Yeah, both. Because women who got arrested were obviously trash. Mm-hmm.
So
that
treat
was
them as such.
That was sort of the societal point of view. And not that that's that much different today. I mean, women who are arrested for sex work are often abused by their jailers.
Yeah.
So it's fucked up. So when she gets out of jail, she goes after her cousin with a rock.
You go, girl.
So...
Die standing up.
This is all of the background. And here's where we're going to actually start the thing that gets her notoriety rolling. Okay, so she's really fucking famous in India. And she's famous enough that there were major articles written about her in the United States as well. Huge articles in the Atlantic and New York Times and things like that. So she is not an unknown person eventually. So this is how she becomes famous. So there are multiple accounts of what happens next. In one version, her uncle is determined to get rid of her once and for all, and he orchestrates her kidnapping by a band of armed robbers. And in India, they're known as dacoits or bajis. We're going to call them bandits because that's a more familiar term in English. Mm-hmm. Another version, so the first version is her uncle orchestrates this kidnapping. Another version is that the bandits came and captured her brother, and she followed them and it gave herself up in exchange for her brother. And then the third version is that she actually went after the gang and sought them out and went with them willingly. And I guess the reason why there are so many different versions is because she's told different versions of this story.
Okay.
So there's no real... Nobody knows exactly how it happened, but my guess would be, based on her uncle's behavior prior,
Yeah.
it seems pretty damn likely that story number 1 is more accurate. So the gang was actually a mixed caste gang. So they had lower and not like high up because it is a gang, but it's like lower and less lower. And
medium.
Yeah, medium low. And it was led by a man named Babu Gujar. He was a higher caste than the Mala. So for the next 72 hours after she's taken by this gang, she is brutalized by Babu Gujar. On the evening of the third day, so this is terrible, right? Like everybody in the gang knows what's happening to her, and it's awful. So on the evening of the third day, his chief lieutenant and deputy, a man named Vikram Malla, so he's in the same caste as Phoolan, he developed an affinity for her, and he gets pissed that this guy is still brutalizing her, and he walks in and he shoots him in the head.
Oh, whoa. Okay.
Yeah. So then Vikram took over the gang. He was like, I'm the fucking chief now, people.
I'm the one holding the smoking gun.
I'm in charge. So he took over the gang as its leader, and that was considered very scandalous because he was a lower caste person in charge of this gang. Like, it was okay to have a mixed caste gang as long as the upper caste was the one in charge.
Okay.
But because he's lower caste and now he's elevated himself to leader, people are scandalized by this in the gang. They're like, we won't follow some lower caste dude. You know, that's that's below us. We're not doing that. So this was pretty scandalous by itself, but then he takes Phoolan as his lover.
Oh.
And he already has a wife. So that becomes scandal number 2 in the gang. So legend has it, though, that like when Vikram took her as his lover, the two of them ran the gang together. She was very much like 50% in the leadership. And that was another thing that the men in the gang were not appreciate.
About it. Yeah.
Because they weren't going to take orders from a woman. So legend has it they were in charge of the gang, and they went to Phoolan's husband's village. The old man, the 45-year-old who married her when she was 11. They go to his village. They drag him out of his house, and they stab him. And they left him on the road with a note attached to him that warned older men not to marry younger girls.
I know that's terrible, but I kind of love that.
Oh, I'm telling you this story because I like revenge plots. And I like her life is like one giant revenge plot, and I fucking love it.
Yeah.
If you don't like revenge plots, too bad, so sad. It's my story. So I love this. So she puts this note on him, and he survives. He doesn't die from the attack. He has a large scar that runs down his abdomen for the rest of his life. And for the rest of his life, he lives as a recluse because people were avoiding him out of fear of being attacked by bandits if they associated with him.
Table turned. Yep.
No, I'm happy she did that. Like, hell yeah. And he fucking like beat her and raped her when she was like 11 years old.
Jeez.
The least that could happen to him is have his abdomen scar.
Yeah.
And a note that says,
yeah,
don't do that,
don't
boys.
do that.
So Vikram took her under his wing, and he taught her how to shoot. Like, he taught her how to defend herself. He was like, you're going to know this because I want you to be strong.
Yeah.
She actually said that he was the first man to treat me like a human being, not a slave or a piece of flesh.
Wow. She
was deeply in love with him and really respected him, and he very much respected her. So that can't last, right?
No.
We're only halfway through the story, obviously can't. So the gang, what they did though was they would attack, like they were bandits, right? So they would like be in the sides of the hills and stuff. And as really like well-to-do cars, like luxury cars would come by, they would attack and they would rob them. So they only robbed rich people, which I know is still robbery, but like they'll have more.
They can, yeah. They have
I mean, and
insurance.
we're talking about like, we're kind of moving this direction in the United States where we have like this wealthy, super wealthy class that like nothing touches them, and you could steal all you want from them and they're still going to have billions of dollars left. That was sort of who they were attacking. And so unrest was, so they're getting rich though. Like they're stealing a lot from a lot of people and everybody in the gang is doing pretty well, these bandits. But there's a little bit of unrest happening in the gang because the whole caste system and the fact that Phoolan, they see her as a ruined, disgusting woman, and no way, like she's lower caste, she's disgraced, she's not like she's a woman in general.
I know
like we
bandits
don't
had standards,
right? It's like, I don't know. Take a look in the mirror,
You're a
fuckers.
thief. Exactly.
But there are two men in particular, Lal Ram Singh and Sri Ram Singh, who were two brothers who had been very loyal to the original guy, Babu Gujar. And they had been in jail. And when they got out, they found out what happened.
Yeah.
That Vikram had shot and killed Babu Gujar, and also that he had the whole thing with Phoolan. And they were really upset. And they had been very loyal to Babu Gujar, so they were pissed. So they get out of jail and they confront her. And they hold Phoolan directly responsible for what they call inciting the murder.
What? Why is it all her fault? Because she's a woman?
Yeah, that's about the beginning and end of it.
My goodness.
So they hold her responsible, and there's a scuffle between them in which Sri Ram grabs Phoolan, and Vikram reprimands them.
Ooh, ruh-roh.
And they're completely humiliated by this because both Phoolan and Vikram are from a lower caste.
Yep.
They're from this higher caste. So one night, Phoolan and Vikram, I believe they're in a tent because they're like sleeping out in the hills. And they're sleeping and they hear a noise. They both sit up, and the next thing Phoolan knows, Vikram is slumped forward with his head in her lap, and he'd been shot.
Oh, wow.
And killed. Trigger warning.
Okay.
On August 13th, 1980. So she is 17.
Jeez, she's so young. Yeah.
Yes. Lal Ram and Sri Ram Singh gag and chloroform her, bind her arms and legs, and lock her away in a village called Bemai. Or Bemay. That's one I should have looked up. So she's in this village, locked away in a hut, and she was kept captive there for 3 weeks.
Jeez.
And every night she was raped and humiliated by multiple men. Like, they would have a line.
Jeez.
It was awful. On the 23rd day, she was dragged out of the shed. She was bruised and filthy, and Sri Ram demanded that she go get water from the village well. So everyone in the village, it's like a tiny little village, right? The well is in the center of the town. Everybody sees the well. Like, everybody has to use this public well. So people in the village are watching her through the windows. All of the men in this village have gathered, and they are jeering her. You know, like yelling nasty things at her, throwing rocks at her, whatever. Sri Ram kicked her and ripped off the blanket that she was using to cover herself, and so she was left naked in the center of the town, getting the water from the well. So everybody's watching this thing. Everybody sees it happen. So after this particularly disgusting public humiliation, this guy named Santosh Pandit was a friend of Phoolan's and a priest from a nearby village. He sneaks into the hut that night and carries her to safety in the back of a cart. She's 17. So with the help of another bandit guy named Man Singh, Phoolan joins a new gang, and then she's like, this is my gang. So she takes charge, and she vows that she's going to take revenge on the brothers. Good. And the village of Bemai.
Oh, jeez.
So they, once again, they're attacking people who are wealthy, but legend has it that she is, when they attack rich people, that they're taking from the rich, and then she's distributing some of it out to poor people in the villages.
Oh, wow.
So these wealthy people who are going between the cities and passing these extremely poor villages, they're now benefiting from this banditry. And so she becomes kind of famous among lower caste people in general as someone who is fierce, and she is generous, and she believes in her people. Mm-hmm. So she already is kind of becoming famous just amongst lower caste Indians. Now it's time for the revenge plot. So 17 months later, after that attack and stuff, so she's been leading the gang for a year and a half, basically. Mm-hmm. She returns to the village of Bimai.
Oh, God.
She and her gang were dressed all in police uniforms. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
And they descended on the village on the night of a wedding, where the whole village is at the wedding. Phoolan wore bright red lipstick, had a gun slung over her shoulder, and bandoliers of ammunition across her chest. I just want you to hold that image in your mind. With a megaphone, she goes to the village well.
Oh.
And she demanded that they turn over Lal Ram Singh and Sri Ram Singh. And her bandit men, go through the whole village and they ransack all the houses, and they're searching for these two men for well over an hour, but they couldn't find them. So the villagers insisted, we don't know who they are. We've never met them before.
Bullshit.
Exactly. So she's like, you're lying. And I will teach you to tell the truth.
Oh, shit.
So she ordered all of the young men in the village to be rounded up and brought to her. She spat on them and warned them, unless you tell me where those bastards are, I will roast you alive.
Oh, jeez.
She's not fucking around.
Nope.
And again, the men are like, we've never seen them before. We don't know who they are. We don't have any idea. This is infuriating her. Some of these people are the ones who are like jeering at her, watching her.
You don't forget the
crawl
faces.
to a fucking well, naked and covered in bruises, and having been raped and tortured every night. There were probably some of them. I mean, they had to have been some of them were the men who came in the middle of the night, right? Mm-hmm. So she is infuriated by this insistence that they don't even know the men that she's asking for. Mm-hmm. So she's one by one, like, going down the line of these village men, and she's tearing off their turbans and then smacking them in the crotch with the butt of her gun.
Oh.
And then she orders that, well, this is disputed. Some people say she ordered the men to march out of Bamai. Some say that she never made that call. But I'm like, I think she made that call.
Why? Yeah.
So they march them out of the village, and they are at the banks of the river. And they force all of the men to kneel, and bursts of gunfire follow, and 21 men were shot dead.
Jeez.
Yeah. When this hits the newspapers, it becomes insane.
Oh, jeez.
You know, everybody is like... So people kind of fall into two camps. One camp is, I don't care whatever happened to her. You cannot shoot 22 men dead. Mm-hmm. And actually, there were more that were shot, but 22 men have died. It's like 38 or something like that had been shot. So, you know, some people are like, this is a disgrace. This kind of violence is terrible. Like, we can't allow this to happen. And then other people, specifically that lower caste, the Mallas and the other lower castes that are similar to the Mallas, are like, no. Mm-hmm. She was abused and degraded and tortured and brutalized by these people, and they deserved it. Mm-hmm. And this becomes the narrative. There's a massive manhunt now for her. And so they're trying to locate her, and stories of what she's done start really circulating, and people So she starts hiding out in villages that are from poor castes, the lowest classes.
People that'll probably hide her. Yeah.
And they are. They're hiding her. And then when the police come to their doors, they're refusing to cooperate. And they won't give away her location. So she is able to hide for 2 years.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, 2 years that she has not been found. So she actually she sends word to the authorities, and she agrees to surrender. But only under certain conditions. So her gang members at this point are in poor health because everybody has to be hidden and they can't really access things. And, it's like touch and go all the time. And so she's like, we'll surrender, but I have conditions. 1, none of the gang members can get the death penalty. 2, the maximum prison term is 8 years. 3, her and her family get a plot of land. 4, her family is to be escorted by the police to witness her surrender. And the most important to her specifically, she would lay down her arms only before pictures of Gandhi and the Hindu goddess Durga, not the police. She's going to lay down her arms to Gandhi.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And this goddess, I haven't spoken about her before, but this is a goddess who's like really powerful and badass. And like she sort of saw that as who she represented. And other people started to associate her with this goddess.
Okay.
So on the day of her surrender, because it's in a public square, basically, a crowd of 10,000 people come to watch.
Jeez.
And 300 policemen are there. So when she emerges, the crowd erupts in cheers. Like she's a hero.
Yeah.
And she lays down her arms to Gandhi and the goddess Durga. And she's charged with 48 crimes, including 30 of banditry and kidnapping. But I think Thackers, which were the band of people who inhabited Bemai, were in charge. And so even though the conditions were that she was not to spend more than 8 years in jail, she ended up being in prison for 11 years.
Oh, wow.
So in 1994, she gets paroled and she's released from prison. And there was a man who was in leadership at this point who I couldn't quite figure out why, but he decides that she is pardoned and exonerated for all of her charges.
Wow.
Yeah. He withdrew all of the charges against her, and it sent this like shockwave across India. Some people felt like they were condoning the violence, especially the people who were part of that caste and in the village.
Was she released after her 11 years because of that? Or she was exonerated after? Okay.
Well, and I guess there's something really weird about the way the Indian legal system works, because technically she was in jail pending trial.
What?
But never actually had her trial.
Okay.
So like those 11 years she served in prison were indefinite because she'd been charged, but she'd never been found guilty. So this man said, I'm erasing all charges against her.
Oh, so they couldn't bring it back.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she's like, all right, cool, I'm out.
Yeah.
But while she was in prison, she had converted to Buddhism and became like very peaceful and spoke very eloquently about the futility of violence, which was really interesting.
Very.
So shortly after she was released, she found a man and married him, and his name was Umed Singh. So he was slightly higher caste than her. And he was a politician, a small-time politician, and he introduced Phoolan to the world of politics.
Oh.
So I want you to just think about this. She was a 10-year-old girl who was from the lowest caste system, basically, and was brutalized, raped, married off, joined a gang, robbed people.
She killed a few.
And then was like kidnapped and raped some more, and then killed 22 men. And now she's like, I think I want to run for parliament. I just want you to imagine, like, if Hillary Clinton had killed people and then ran for public office.
Yeah.
We would have been like, no. But that's not what happens. She runs for parliament and people are excited.
Wow.
And this is about the time when there's sort of almost like a crisis happening in India about the caste system and how unfair it is.
Mm-hmm.
And
so unfair. It's so fucked up.
Ridiculous. And the lowest class people are fucking pissed.
Yep.
And they see her as a symbol of rising from the ashes,
mm-hmm.
of being able to take all these beatings and still come back. So she campaigns and won. She won the election and served in parliament from 1996 to 1998.
Wow.
And then she lost her seat in the 98 election, but won it back in 1999. So she was a sitting member of parliament. And at this point, because she was a sitting member of parliament, she had access to wealth and things like that. Like she started to dress really nice and she was very like well-spoken in public and elegant. And people just were goo-goo gaga over her.
Mm-hmm.
At least a lot of people were. She was a symbol that people could rise up and that India needed to recognize that the caste system was unfair and that you cannot limit people's access based on superficial ideas about
mm-hmm.
who they are. And she was super inspirational in that way. So she actually, like I said, she was like nicely dressed.
Mm-hmm.
She was wearing like middle class Indian woman garb, like what would be considered the clothing of women in the middle class. And that ended up vindicating her in a lot of people's eyes. Like her ability to look nice, and it was like proof. See, like what you wear doesn't make you better. You know, you just because you look like you're from an upper class doesn't mean you are. And that's why the class system or the caste system
is all
bogus.
circus.
But not everyone felt that way about her.
Probably the upper class.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, she represented a revolution.
Yeah.
To a lot of people. She represented the ability of the lowest castes to overthrow the upper castes.
Oh, and they are terrified of that. And
especially men,
terrified.
Right? Especially these men.
Oh, yeah.
These rich men. So she is seen as a threat. And on July 25th, 2001, Phoolan was shot 9 times in the head, chest, and shoulder and right arm outside of her home in an area that was very well policed.
Wow. She was assassinated.
She was assassinated, and she was declared dead at the hospital. And the police completely botched her case. There were accusations that someone had picked up the revolvers that were used by the killers and hid them. 3 other people who lived in her house were accused of knowing about the guns, but the guns disappeared before any forensic tests were ever done.
Wow.
The prime suspect was a man named Sher Singh Rana, and he surrendered to the police. He claimed that he murdered her in revenge for the upper caste men that she gunned down in the Bamai massacre. And on August 14th, 2014, so she was killed in 2001.
Mm-hmm.
13 years later, he is sentenced to life in prison.
What the fuck?
Yeah, and it was around this time that her sister is doing interviews, and she says, I am positive her fucking husband had something to do with this.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And there were other people, because he was from the upper caste.
Yeah.
And so people believed, her sister in particular, and she said she had proof of this, but I don't know what that proof is.
Okay.
That he had coordinated and orchestrated this and made sure that she would be alone and visible and could be shot.
I wonder if that was his plan the whole time.
I kind of gather that from what her sister was saying. So her life story has been told in a number of Indian films and books, including a 1994 movie called Bandit Queen. So she was alive when that came out, and she hated it, and she threatened to set herself on fire.
Oh shit!
She hated this movie.
Oh, the severity of a woman's rage.
Because it was really focused on the rape part of her life and not on her like strength. And so even though she was actually illiterate, right? She wasn't ever allowed to attend school, and so she was never able to read or write. Mm-hmm. She ended up releasing her own autobiography titled The Bandit Queen of India, an Indian woman's amazing journey from peasant to international legend.
Ooh. I'd like to read that.
I know, I kind of do too. And there's actually a documentary being made about her, or was made like in 2016 or 17, that was really thorough. And I had watched pieces of that, and one of the sources that I used was actually like in conjunction with this documentary.
Okay.
So I kind of used a little bit from Wikipedia, but I actually didn't use most of it because I found it really funny. Nowhere else, like I read a lot about this woman, right? Mm-hmm. I read this place called Roads and Kingdoms, which was really great. It was published in 2017. I read stuff on The Guardian and this article from the Atlantic's archives from 1996.
Oh, wow. So
where she is interviewed by the reporter. So nowhere else, not any other source except for Wikipedia, had this like accusation in it that all of the men she gunned down, like that she had ordered gunned down in the Bemai massacre, were innocent. Huh? I know. I was like, oh, somebody's got a fucking agenda when they wrote this article, because nowhere else does it say that. Literally nowhere else. And the fact that what happened to her in that village was so well documented, there's just no fucking way that all of those men were just so innocent. Yeah. They either were complicit in what happened to her or they were participants in what happened to her.
Mm-hmm. Which is just as guilty.
Exactly. And I read that Wikipedia entry and I was like, I'm not going to use anything from here that isn't like direct factual stuff, like dates. Yeah. Because this is obviously biased against her. Yeah. Because it also was like, oh yeah, people said she robbed from the rich and gave to the poor, but that's not true. But for no information.
You're like, what?
I was like, I bet she did do it. I bet you're a hater. You're from upper caste. Wow.
Start whispering that about people now. Oh man, she went through so much. I could not imagine. And still trying to make a difference.
I thought it was so amazing that she did legitimately terrible things, but still became an elected member of parliament. And her platform was all about helping the poor.
That's awesome.
So, she was... I can get why she's controversial, and I get why it's not great to, like, say somebody's a hero after they did such horrible acts of violence, but come on. Like, how many times have you watched a movie and it's been a revenge plot and you're happy when the bad guys die? Right? Yeah. I mean, it's just who we are. We want to see like people who've done terrible, terrible, terrible things to people. We want to see them pay for it. Mm-hmm. And she wanted to see them pay for it. And I would also like to point out that everything she did that was what we would consider heinous, she did before she was 18 years old. True. Like, I don't know about you, but I wasn't exactly a stable teenager.
No, neither was I. No,
I don't think I mean, I would be like, give me the goddamn gun. I'm going to blow that all. I mean, like, I don't know how you could hold her like completely responsible. She was a child for, starting at age 10.
Just, being traumatized also. Mm-hmm.
Getting every piece of herself ripped away.
Mm-hmm. You'd go a little shoot from the hip too, I think.
So, what did you think? Was that too intense?
I didn't think. It definitely was like, that's disheartening. Mm. It's not. You don't want to hear about that, or you don't want to think that actually happened to somebody.
I did read and did not share some of the more brutal aspects of the time in the hut.
I appreciate that.
And I was like, no one needs to hear about that. I'm sorry I read that.
And especially if it seemed that she didn't want that to be her focus. Mm-mm. And so if that's what she was not wanting, then let's keep it that way.
Yeah. I didn't want to share that. I don't think it needs to be told. I think we have imaginations and we live in reality and we know what kinds of things happen in that situation.
Exactly. But no, I didn't think it. I'm happy that you did it. Because it's like, this chick is a badass and she deserves recognition, and that's what we're doing.
And I think it's great. Personally, I was looking for a person to cover this week that was complicated. That it wasn't just easy to admire her. Mm-hmm. Because I think that it's unfair. This happens to immigrants a lot too. Mm-hmm. that like we only tell the stories about the ones who are amazing and went above and beyond and never did anything wrong and they were perfect and amazing, because we have to tell those stories in order to have validity as human beings. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to do a story about someone who wasn't great. Not everything she did was wonderful.
Was perfect, yeah.
She wasn't well educated. She didn't learn anything new for science. She didn't like make a new law. She didn't found a great organization. She was a thief, a gang leader, and then somehow became elected to parliament.
Can make a change.
And I tried to find out, like, did she do anything special in parliament? All it said was that she was advocating for lower caste people. I don't think she accomplished anything great, but she was very inspirational to some people and also very awful to other people who just were not happy that she was allowed to go about her day. I like complicated people.
I like complicated people too. So the person I chose, a little bit more on the lighthearted side.
Yay!
So I was watching Friends, and it was the episode. Have you ever seen the episode where Ross lets his son play with a Barbie doll? Or like he's upset that his son's playing with a Barbie doll?
Probably. I mean, I've watched every single episode of Friends at least 2 or 3 times. As did any child growing up in the 90s.
Exactly. I'm rewatching it right now. So I was thinking I was like, oh God, I remember my bucket of Barbies, like when I was a kid and when I used to play with them. And I was a very lonely child at times because I was the youngest of 6 and they were all off being all grown up and shit. And I was still playing with toys. So like my Barbies were kind of like, I would have them talk to each other and I would create my own little world and, you know, and I could
I created pornos.
Oh, I did sex things with them too.
I was like real obsessed with like orgies. My Barbies were doing all kinds of nasty ass shit.
I'm glad that I'm not the only one that did that.
Oh, yeah.
But it was like a way to, I don't know, get outside yourself and experiment with things, obviously. Yeah. So I didn't, I had always known that the inventor of the Barbie was a woman, but I didn't know who she was. Ruth Handler.
Oh, gosh, I think I knew something about this because I was obsessed with Barbies when I was a kid, but I don't remember anything. So this is all new to me now.
All right. So Ruth Handler, co-founder of Mattel and inventor of the Barbie doll. Co-founder and CEO, by the way. So Handler was born on November 4th, 1916 as Ruth Mariana Mosko in Denver, Colorado, to Polish Jew immigrants Ida and Jacob. She was the youngest of 10 kids. I know. Yep. You're talking to the person of a child of, or a parent of 1 and fur babies over here.
Yeah. I got no bio kids.
Nope.
Not having them.
Nope. So her father, Jacob, arrived first at Ellis Island in 1907. Her family fled Poland before Ruth was born to avoid her father being drafted into the Russian army.
And what year was that?
1907.
So they were probably trying to get out before the pogroms too, which was when Russia like rounded up their Jews and killed them in the like.
It was not a good time.
Well, and it was well before World War II. Mm-hmm. You know, we think of the Holocaust as like when that kind of shit happened, but the pogroms all across Eastern Europe, specifically in Russia, were awful, and they happened in like 1919, something like that.
Well, they fled to America. So upon arrival to the U.S., Jacob let the immigration office know that he was a blacksmith by trade, and so they sent him to Denver. I know. Could you imagine that? Showing up and being like, hey, I can do this. And they're like, okay, go to Denver.
Here's the mountains. Culture shock.
Oh, but it was where the railroad industry was happening. So that's where he got sent. So Ida followed a year later, making the journey alone with her 6 kids that she had at the time.
I just can't even imagine that. Like, it's hard enough now.
Like, okay, 6
when there's
babies.
Screens and you can put on Netflix if you want.
Yes. So when Ruth was born, Ida was 40 years old, and it made note, and Ruth commented on this, that her mother became very ill and frail. She had to give her up at 6 months old
She gave up Ida?
Yeah. She gave Ida to go live, or she sent her away to go live with her oldest sister, Sarah, and her husband, Louis Greenwald. So she did not have much of a relationship with her parents. She was raised by her sister and her brother-in-law.
Okay.
And she stayed with them till she was 19 years old. Her sister Sarah and her husband owned a drugstore / soda fountain. Which, why do they put soda fountains in drugstores?
I don't know. It was a thing.
Why? It's like, I'm going to go get some freaking
I'm going to get some aspirin.
diarrhea medication and go eat some ice cream? I don't know. Well, actually, that's the truth for me because I can't have dairy.
Oh, subliminal.
So Ruth said she...
Not subliminal. Oh my God, I have no words today. Okay, sorry.
Blah.
Subliminal.
Subliminal. Hey, I make up words all the time.
I mean, no, subliminal's a word. It's just like messaging. I don't know. I was just wrong. That's all.
So Ruth said she first developed her enthusiasm for business working at the soda shop / drugstore. She preferred to work rather than play, and she grew up in her family, the idea of women working outside of the home was not unusual. She enjoyed making tips, and she saved every penny of her money. She was a smart girl.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So in Poland, where anti-Semitism had fueled impoverished conditions, everyone had to participate in making a living. So she attributed her entrepreneurial spirit because of that circumstance. That was a big word for me.
Yeah.
It's early.
That's definitely a big word.
So of course, a young girl with aspiring dreams, what can get in the way?
Men. Am I right?
Yes.
Ding, ding, ding.
So at 16, she meets Elliot Izzy Handler at a B'nai B'rith dance, which is like, it's a young Jewish get-together.
Like
It's kind of a meet and greet. Like you're in the presence of adults and you guys can dance and you can chat, but you're being watched.
You're gonna stay holy.
Yes. So Elliot wanted to be an artist. He was a dreamer. He was deemed a poor match by her family for Ruth.
I thought you said a porn match at first, and I was like, whoa, we're getting into it.
A poor match.
Barbie's first husband was a porn star.
Oh my God. That sounds like the world's worst movie, by the way.
Oh my God, we're all about the porn today.
I know. About the D. So they envisioned him as being a not very successful artist. So they were like, Ruth, this guy doesn't have much of a future, just keep your head straight. And they wanted more for her. And she had been accepted to the University of Denver. So they wanted her to go to school. So she and Izzy, quote unquote, stayed friends. They were seeing each other on the side.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. She graduated. She goes to university. And in 1935, it's her sophomore year of college, she takes a trip to LA. She goes to visit a friend. She ends up falling in love with LA. Because why wouldn't you? You're in fucking Denver and you go to Los Angeles.
Well, I mean, LA is beautiful. I went there for the first time this summer and I was like, yeah, there's smog. Yeah, there's traffic. It sucks. The traffic seriously sucks. Mm-hmm. And I don't recommend certain areas of the beaches, but like I did the first night or the first day I was there, I went on this hike with a friend and we went, up one of the like Runyon Canyon or whatever. And you can look over basically all of LA.
Ooh.
And it was really cool. And there are mountains. So you got the best of both worlds, right? Like you're really close to real mountains and the ocean. Mm-hmm. And it's Hollywood.
You imagine in the 1930s how sparkly and pretty that was? Mm. Yeah. So she sees it and she's like, fuck Denver.
Yeah.
So she ends up finding a secretarial job for Paramount Pictures. And she moves there. And she's like, hey, Izzy, bye. But Izzy says, I love you. And he follows her. So according to my research, at this point, Izzy follows her. He's trying to do his thing there. She's working. She's got a job. He's not doing so well. They move back to Denver and they get married. But then they move back to LA.
Weird.
So I was wondering if this was like a cultural thing of like, you got to bring him here. You guys got to get married here and establish yourselves or something.
I don't know. That seems weird. Like,
and it was about a year.
They moved to LA, then back to Colorado, and then back to LA in like a year.
So they were in LA for a while. They got engaged there.
Okay.
So then they moved back and got married in Denver.
But they moved back. They didn't just go back for the wedding.
Yeah. They moved back to Denver. So I don't know if they were like,
That's
I wonder
weird.
if it was like, you can have permission to get married if you move home.
Yeah. Or I wonder if they were like, well, you're establishing yourselves. LA is not a place to do that. Come home. We'll help you.
And so they got married and then
they were like, actually, we want to go back to LA.
So, but they go back to LA. She goes back to working for Paramount. And Izzy, now encouraged by Ruth, goes by his formal name, Elliot. Like, knock off this Izzy shit. Your name is Elliot.
Yeah, you're a grown man.
You're a grown man. He enrolls in the Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, California for industrial design. And he finds a job designing light fixtures. And so it's like, they went and got married. They went back, but Izzy's got to get his shit together. But I'm sorry, Elliot. So.
Yeah, I like that he went to school, though.
So this is, the timeline was a little fuzzy on this. I tried to do the best I could with all the information I had, but I figured out this is all between like 1938, 1945. So this is, they came back to LA. They're married. He's in school. She's working. So Elliot starts sketching designs for lucite accessories. And are you familiar? You're familiar with lucite.
Yeah.
All the jewelry, chairs, tables,
Yeah.
picture frames. God, freaking water jugs.
Jewelry in particular. That's what I know lucite for.
So Ruth encourages him to produce the pieces and agrees to do the selling and start a side business of her own, or the side business for both of them. She makes sales calls and delivers samples during her lunch hour. So she's working full time and she's working her side hustle. So I took this quote from her. She says, "I found that I love the challenge of selling. Adrenaline surged through me whenever I walked into a store with samples and walked out with an order."
Nice.
So, yeah, she liked to, get it done. So Elliot drops out of school and him and Ruth start doing the business full time. They were even able to make a third partner. His name was Harold Matson, whom they hired as their production expert. And she ended up negotiating one of their first very large order with Douglas Aircraft, which was for die-cast models of the Douglas DC-3 airplane, which they were giving out to their customers for Christmas. So they were doing like a lot of novelty stuff.
Yeah.
They started to pick up steam, and during that time, Roosevelt announced that plastics were to be used for military use. So their whole lucite accessories thing kind of took a little bite.
Yeah, it's the heart of World War II.
Yeah, so the Handlers were in the middle of producing a line of plastic picture frames, and they needed to fill the order. So Ruth changed the materials to low-grade wood, which was a huge success, and they ended up doubling their order. So that was another push financially. So with the success, they wanted to name their company and make it full steam. So they put Matt and Elliot's name together, which was Mattel. And even though it was Ruth's idea for the picture frames and her selling was like critical in them landing accounts, it never occurred to them to include her name in the company name. Yeah.
Sexism sucks.
I know. Ruth's over here like, hey, y'all,
I basically made this company successful, but don't bother to include me.
Fucking time. So they began using scraps from manufacturing processes to make dollhouse furniture. The furniture was more profitable than the picture frames, so they decided toys. Toys is going to be the thing. So shortly before their daughter Barbara was born in 1941, Ruth quit her job. She's like, I'm doing this. I got a baby. Something's got to give.
Well, I think it's cool that it sounds like she was quitting to go with the business full time, not to work.
Yeah, exactly.
And of course, working for yourself gives you more flexibility to actually be a mother.
Mm-hmm. They also had a son named Ken. So Barbara and Ken.
Oh my God. I had no idea.
I thought that was awesome. So in its first full year of operation, Mattel showed sales of $100,000, mostly in the dollhouse furniture. Yeah, it's like a decent.
That's a lot of money.
Profit. So the handlers turned to other types of toys, including miniature plastic ukulele, which was one of their number one selling items, and a toy piano. So the idea of creating, too, with the toys, they saw profit. That first year was awesome, but then they started seeing people kind of taking their ideas and making them cheaper, and then so it was cutting into their sales. It did say that she did have to borrow some money from one of her brothers, and it wasn't a little bit; it was a lot of it. So the idea of creating Barbie came to Ruth when she was watching her preteen daughter Barbara, playing with paper dolls. She noticed that the paper dolls were made poorly and the clothes wouldn't fit and would fall off, and it wasn't realistic, to be fun for them. She also noticed that her daughter and her daughter's friends pretended that the dolls were adults, and that with their own careers, they made lives for them, boyfriends, outfits, and accessories. So Ruth realized that the preteen girls no longer wanted to play with baby dolls. They wanted a real representation of who they wanted to be. And she saw, quote, there was a gap in the market that needed to be filled.
Yeah, that's quite the gap. I mean, that's what I did too.
Yeah.
Did you ever play with Skipper?
Oh, I loved Skipper.
I became a Skipper diehard person.
I had one Skipper doll.
Do you remember when they did the facial redesign? Mm-hmm. In the late 90s, probably, or maybe mid 90s.
They softened up her face, didn't they?
Well, and they had less Barbie eye, or less doe eyes. The features actually became, I thought, nicer. And so originally I had a lot of Barbies, but I became a really big fan of Courtney, which was Skipper's friend with brown hair and purple outfits.
Does she have purple eyes?
No, not purple eyes, but I think purple eyeshadow.
Okay.
So I really liked Courtney and Skipper because they were teenagers. Mm-hmm. And
Their feet were flat?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I felt like Barbie was, by the time I was older, I felt like Barbie was old fashioned, I guess. And I really liked playing with Skipper. And then when they did the redesign on Skipper's face, and she looked like a real teenager.
You were like, holy shit.
Yeah, and her boyfriend was Kevin.
Yeah.
And I actually, you know what I did? Because it was the 90s, and I was so I was on that cusp between adolescence and teen years.
Did you cut her hair?
No, okay. No. I never cut their hair because I always looked bad.
I did. I had a quote, boyfriend for Barbie, and I just cut another Barbie's hair, so it was really just a lesbian couple.
So I took Kevin's clothes off of Kevin and put them on Skipper.
Oh my goodness.
So that she had super low-waisted baggy jeans and a flannel.
Oh god.
She was lit.
Oh, we're so queer. Well, so yeah, and two, she noticed we can make some money here.
Oh yeah, that's a whole gap in the market.
Exactly.
It's a huge hole.
So Ruth suggested making a plastic doll with a realistic body, but her suggestion was shot down. Elliot and other company executives were concerned that parents would be unwilling to let their daughters play with a doll with a voluptuous figure. So, girls can't look at what they're going to look like as women. Oh my God.
Well, I mean, that's still controversial.
Yeah.
Barbie's figure, because it's unrealistic now.
Mm-hmm. There's that, yes. So she goes on vacation in Europe, and she sees an adult German doll named Lily with the same features that she was hoping to introduce in her doll. So she came home, she redesigned the doll, including some of the features she had seen in Lily, and she named the doll Barbie after her daughter Barbara. She redesigned it and designed it again with the help of an engineer named Jack Ryan, and she pushed for Barbie for 3 years. So this is back to the drawing board, back to trying to represent her idea for 3 years.
And also, obviously, had to convince them that this was something that was marketable.
Mm-hmm. So the company picks it up. Barbie was launched at a toy fair in New York in 1959 with very little success. It was successful, but it was small. So Mattel, at this point, with their other toy production had reached $5 million in sales.
Whoa.
So they're sitting on some pretty cash.
Yeah.
So they took a risk and they ended up doing a 15-minute sponsorship segment with Walt Disney's Mickey Mouse Club on ABC, 52 weeks for 15 minutes a week for $500,000.
Whoa. I mean, the Mickey Mouse Club was like in every household.
Yeah, that was like
That's a real smart business move.
Yes. So that was a risk for them, but it paid off.
$500,000 would have been a lot. I mean, that's a lot of money too. But it was really like, if they were going to take the gamble, this is the way to do it.
So Barbie was in that, part of that. And the advertisement campaign was a success. It led to immense wealth and fame for the Handlers, of course. The company went public in 1960, and Ruth Handler became president and CEO. The success of Barbie led to Mattel Incorporated to become a Fortune 500 company, and the production of Barbie was expanded overseas, including a wholly owned subsidiary of Mattel in Switzerland. So the first Barbie doll, have you seen the first Barbie doll?
Yeah.
She's like, wearing the black and white zebra.
Black and white zebra print, like chevron. Is it chevron? I think it's chevron.
I think.
Chevron pattern, and she's got those beautiful eyes
that are going sideways. And yeah, they made it, like, they said that was really risky because her eyes going to the side were like demure and kind of come hither, and she had the little top perky ponytail.
Yeah.
So she was sold in either blonde or brunette. It's very limiting.
And white skin.
The doll was marketed as a teenage fashion model, and her clothes were created by a Mattel fashion designer named Charlotte Johnson. Do you know Barbie's full name?
No.
She has a full name.
She has a real full name?
Barbara Millicent Roberts. That's Barbie's name.
Barbie has a three-name name.
And it's Millicent.
Oh, that's a terrible middle name.
I know.
Although, honestly, Barbie is a terrible first name now.
Right, yeah. I would know. It's like, I don't want to offend anybody, but it's like being named Candy or...
Well, no, I just think it's old-fashioned. Like, most people I know who are named Barbara are much older women.
Mm-hmm. So around 350,000 Barbie dolls were sold during its first year in production. They had a secretary that answered 20,000 fan letters a week.
Oh, what a terrible job.
I know, right? Yeah. Imagine being that person.
No, thank you.
By 1968, the Barbie fan club grew to 1.5 million members in the U.S. Sales were through the roof, and the company spread itself out over other ventures. So they created plastic and die casting companies, which I imagine was probably self-serving. Like, you create the company that creates your toys. Makes sense. They went into entertainment. They made a couple movies, other goods producing companies, and a $50 million theme park in Florida. I know.
Well, that doesn't exist anymore, does it?
Probably not. No,
I don't
not
think
that
so.
I saw.
I've never heard of it.
But all the money spread so thin quickly broke down their foundation. This is a quote from Ruth. She said, "We should have stayed in the toy business, accepted a slower growth rate, and resisted the temptation to acquire so freely. Our organization was not really equipped to evaluate and control so many diverse companies, and our internal auditing capability was inadequate to ferret out the problems in advance."
Yeah, I was going to say, like, they have their hands in a lot of pots.
It was a lot. It was a lot. So around this time, too, Ruth is diagnosed with breast cancer.
Oh.
And she had to take a leave of absence from her company to work on her recovery. And so because of her illness, she spent less time at Mattel, and she lost her self-esteem, or her loss of self-esteem affected her leadership, and she lost control of the business. For 2 years, and this is the same time she's in and out because she's sick, it's 1971 and 1972, Mattel issued false and misleading financial reports. And in 1973, the company reported a $32 million loss, just 3 weeks after the stockholders had been assured that the company was financially sound.
Oh, shit.
So that's also known as fraud and misleading the shareholders. Fraud. So Mattel's stock plummeted, and the Security and Exchange Commission, the SEC, stepped in to investigate into the finances. They were charged with false reporting to the SEC and conspiracy. Oh. They were ordered to pay $57,000 in fines. Ruth was, she pled innocent, but she was the leader of the company, so someone has to take a fall.
Yep.
So she was forced out of the company that she started. She had a 41-year sentence that was suspended for probation for 5 years. So I think it was because they were able to pay their fine.
I mean, honestly, though, 41 years, that seems like
Severe?
a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Especially
she didn't
since
kill
she
anybody.
she wasn't there. So they're doing this shit behind her back.
Yeah, I kind of don't know about that, though. I kind of feel like she probably had some idea and she sort of played coy about it.
True. I didn't think of that. Well, she got required to perform 500 hours of community service per year of her 5 years of probation. Elliot, who was just a product designer with no say in the day-to-day running, he was exonerated.
Yeah, sure.
To settle with the shareholders, the Handlers had to turn over 2.5 million shares of their own stock.
Does that mean that they lose the control of the company and it now goes to the shareholders?
So that was, Ruth described it as half of everything.
Yep.
Yeah, that they had worked for 30 years. So the Handlers cashed in the remaining of their Mattel stock, which was it was in the millions.
Yeah.
So they're not, out
They're
on
not
the street
poor. They're
wearing
not
potato sacks.
Yeah, they're not walking away poor.
No, ending their involvement in the company that they founded. During this, Ruth underwent surgery, and she had a full mastectomy on her left breast. She was really unhappy with the search for a prosthesis because she said they left them like one would be too heavy or they would move and shift, and one looked like smaller than the other. Not like the usual, this boob is smaller than this boob. It was wonky. So she ended up designing one for herself, and then she realized, I should probably do this for other women. So she ended up, with the money that they cashed in from their Mattel, she founded a company called Nearly Me. And it was founded in 1976, where she designed and sold comfortable and realistic prosthetic breasts for women that had lost them due to breast cancer.
Wow, I had no idea.
Neither did I. I
was
was like,
fascinating.
I know.
Now, question, does it say what material they were made out of?
I looked at the website, and from what she had, they were like a clear, really soft silicone. And
Because do you remember that whole thing in the 80s and 90s where the breast implants were erupting and then like poisoning and killing women? Mm-hmm. I hope those weren't hers.
No, these were on the outside.
Oh.
Yeah, they were a prosthetic.
Okay. So
And
they
would
weren't
like
implants.
No, they would like stick on almost like, have you seen those like, I don't know, chicken cutlet bras?
Yeah. And you put them inside the bra.
They would like stick on.
Oh, I kind of love that.
Yeah, so
then
you
don't
didn't
have to have
surgery
surgery and shit.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So some of them are like kind of clear looking, but very, very like they show like, them squishing them, and they look very soft. And then the ones that are on the website now are like flesh colored and look a little bit softer.
Do they have multiple colors of flesh?
They have multiple colors of flesh.
Okay, they get a pass from me then.
So yeah, she starts Nearly Me, and she designs comfortable, realistic prosthetic breasts. Her cancer did a return, and she beat it a second time. Wow. She said, I forgot that quote. Oh, there was this fabulous quote that she had said that when she designed Barbie, it was for young girls because she wanted them to look at who they wanted to be, and that woman included breasts. And, people got all freaked out about it, and she's like, well, this is what a real woman looks like. And so she was like, starting with Barbie and that fight for the boob, she's like, here I am with this company giving it to women who lost theirs. And it was just, I thought it was fantastic.
Kind of a full circle thing.
Full circle, definitely. She said, when I conceived Barbie, I believed it was important to a little girl's self-esteem to play with a doll with breasts. Now I find it's even more important to return that self-esteem to women who have lost theirs.
I love that.
The quote, yes.
Love that.
So Ruth Handler received numerous awards for her accomplishments in business and philanthropy. She was named Woman of the Year in Business by the Los Angeles Times, which is like, she did lose a lot, but she still did amazing things.
Yeah.
She was inducted into the Toy Industry Hall of Fame. She received a Volunteer Achievement Award from the American Cancer Society. And she was the first woman of distinction of the United Jewish of Appeal.
Very cool.
Yeah. Unfortunately, she was diagnosed with colon cancer. So, I mean, she had some aggressive forms in her.
You kind of wonder if maybe her exposure to chemicals when she was making lucite and plastic and all that stuff contributed.
I did not even think about that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that contributes to that.
Well, I mean, they didn't have any idea what those chemicals would do to human beings. So that's why we have regulations now.
Oh.
And
they were producing this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, she was probably in the factories with the chemicals.
Their first factory was in their home.
Yeah, I'm sure that she had exposure to things that permanently, not to mention that, like, the pesticides they were using at that point, they were I mean, you were literally ingesting poison on a regular basis in the 50s and 60s and 70s and even in the 80s and 90s. So that had to have contributed.
To get cancer 3 times.
Yeah.
That's pretty severe.
And breast cancer and colon cancer, like,
those are 2 way different cancers. Too.
Yeah, my mom has colon cancer and people in my family have died from it, and it's yeah, if you catch it early, it's actually very treatable, but generally you don't have any symptoms until it's too late.
Oh. Wow.
So go get your colon cancer screening, guys.
Get checked.
Like seriously, colonoscopies are terrible, I can tell you from experience, but it's like 48 hours of terrible, and then you're cancer free. And if you get them regularly done, you can catch that cancer before it ever actually becomes real, like a real problem. Mm-hmm. I have a friend, this is going to sound crazy, but his mom died of colon cancer, and like a year later, my mom was diagnosed with colon cancer. And then about 3 years ago, he was diagnosed with colon cancer at the age of 32.
Jeez. That's really freaking
And the
young.
only reason they found it is because he was having weird farts. I'm not shitting you. Like, he was like, I just thought my farts were smelling weird, and I decided to go in, and they looked at the fact that my mom died of colon cancer before she was 55, and they were like, let's screen. Mm-hmm. So
sure
just
enough,
get the screening done. And just to say, people under the age of 50 being diagnosed with colon cancer in the last 4 years has gone up 30%.
Yikes. 'Cause nobody gets checked for that.
No, because it's an old person's disease. Mm-hmm. Like, we have another friend who died of it 2 years ago, I guess, a year and a half ago. And he was young. He was 51. And again, that was another situation where they found it
way too late.
So get checked, man.
Get checked. Well, she was having surgery, and complications happened in surgery, and she ended up passing away. So she died on April 27, 2002, at the Century City Hospital in Los Angeles. She was 85. I gathered some stuff that Barbie had accomplished. So Barbie had over 200 inspirational careers, including being an astronaut, a robotics engineer, a journalist, and an entrepreneur, just to name a few. Barbie traveled into space in 1965, 4 years before man walked on the moon. Although she was never won an election, Barbie ran for president 6 times since 1992. And in 2016, she ran on the first all-female ticket. So in 1970, Barbie saved lives in the operating room as a surgeon at a time when few women were applying to medical school. And in 1980s, she took to the boardroom as day and night CEO Barbie. In 1990, Barbie ran for president again, before any female candidate made it to the presidential ballot. In the 2000s, with only 24% of today's STEM careers held by women, Barbie has been a computer engineer, a video game developer, Mars explorer, a robotics engineer, just to name a few. She said, "My whole philosophy was that through a doll, a little girl could be anything she wanted to be. And Barbie always represented a fact that women had choices." So I really like this woman. And how do you feel about the whole debate about how Barbie looks? Did you ever feel like that was how you were supposed to look?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely...
Did it put like an idealism in your head, or?
Well, I don't think it did it on its own. Mm-hmm. But in conjunction with things like magazine covers and the models that we saw and the actresses that we saw, it was very clear to me as a child that I was supposed to be tall, extremely thin, large-breasted, and with
Smiling.
flowing blonde hair, and I needed to be white. You know, there were not a lot of black Barbies or brown Barbies. I mean, there was one black Barbie when I was a kid.
They said the first black Barbie was 1968.
Yeah, and you know what else they did with the black Barbie? They just made her black. Like, it was the same doll. They didn't change her features. They didn't actually make her look like a real African-American person.
They just used black plastic.
Yeah, they just used darker plastic. And I just was not, I mean, of course, as a kid, I didn't think about those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. And actually, the black Barbie was my favorite Barbie, and it was not mine.
Did you steal it?
I stole it from my friend who didn't like her black Barbie, and I was like, well, then you don't deserve her. And she had this sparkly orange dress.
I do believe Amanda was a black woman in a past life. I
think there must have been something going on there. Reincarnated. Mm-hmm. But I was like obsessed with my black Barbie, and then a bitch stole it from me.
My goodness.
I was pissed.
Black Barbies are running low in Montana.
But, you know, now they have a lot of different... I mean, I mean, the Mattel Corporation did definitely, like, at some point decide to reinvent the way Barbie looked. Mm-hmm. But I think it was also a little too late. You know what I'm fascinated by and I love are the people who take real Barbies from the store and then they remake them and give them like textured hair and wider noses and like different skin colors, and they paint them, and I am obsessed with that. Mm-hmm. Like, I watch those videos, I look at them on Etsy, and I just think, like, if I had a kid, this is the Barbie that they would have. They would have all of these different Barbies that look like real people.
Mm-hmm. Better representation.
Yeah. I love that. And so I would say that without the original Barbie, we wouldn't ever even understand that we could make dolls that look like humans.
Yeah.
Because that was her goal, right? Like, she wanted them to look like a woman. Mm-hmm. Even if that woman was an idealized, terrible point of view of what a woman looks like.
Yeah.
You know, I just think it was an admirable idea. And as we've grown as a society, we've understood and continue to understand and that we need to be more cognizant of what visual representations, you know, it matters what kids see.
Yeah. Or what, I feel kind of what they're being programmed to buy. I was always trying to be open with my sons, like whatever he wanted to play with. And he just tended to be more into boy things. But I was like, do you want to look at this? You know, there's this on this side of the aisle. Do you want to do this? And he actually got really into crafts because we can find like jewelry making things and stuff. But as he's getting older, you know, the boxes are bright pink and purple with kittens on it. And he's getting more and more like it's not catching his attention.
Well, and it's so gendered.
It
and
is.
We have like, I don't know if Eastside's ever said anything like this, but like I have overheard kids say like, oh, I don't want to play with that. It's for girls. It's too girly. It's girl. And that's what I was talking about earlier, right? About crying. Like, it was perceived as a weakness because it was perceived as being girly. It was for girls. Girls feel emotions. Why would we ever want a society where the ideal is to not be in touch with the human experience?
Right? How demented is that?
It's terrible. So I am happy that we are breaking that mold. I think that Barbie was, as a doll, great and not great at the same time. I will say one thing, and this may come across as controversial, but you get those goddamn Bratz dolls out of my face. Those, to me, perpetuate
those are
shitty
weird.
Stereotypes.
Those are weird. I don't like them.
Their fucking heads are huge.
And I feel kind of like every girl that I see on Instagram that just wears all that makeup and shit ton of like just fake everything. I feel like they're trying to look like Bratz dolls.
Do you think Bratz dolls were like Kim Kardashian's inspiration?
I think so. Something.
Now, we are not going to go down the body shaming and the, like, I think makeup's great. We both wear a lot of makeup, actually.
Yes.
We both love makeup. We buy a lot. We wear a lot. I have a little bit of an obsession with lip colors.
Yes.
But I will say that, like, there's the Bratz dolls, to me, bothered me because Barbie was always beautiful, but Barbie also had a career and a house and a car. And
Barbie had shit. Barbie broke up with Ken, too.
Yes, multiple times. They have a fucking rocky relationship. I think she needs to do the final walk. Mm-hmm. But, the Bratz dolls always came across to me as vapid. Like, they really weren't about anything but makeup and jewelry. Which, again, there's nothing wrong with loving makeup and jewelry. But I just would like to see my kids' dolls have more to them than... I mean, especially because there's television shows and movies, and the same could be said for Barbie. There were Barbie television shows and things like that. Mm-hmm. But, like, like Gem and the Holograms, like, they were a space flying rock band or whatever. Mm-hmm. And, like, I don't know. I grew up thinking that Barbie was more than just a pretty face. Mm-hmm. And her life wasn't consumed by drama with her friends. Yeah. That's Barbie what I don't like about some of the other dolls. And that's why I was never a fan of the Bratz dolls, because I felt like it was really about a superficial sort of makeup between them. Like, it was drama and it was fashion and things like that, which is fine, but... Gosh, can't she also be interested in math? Yeah. Like, she can be interested in fashion and math. She can be having friend drama, but also be reading a book. Like,
well, I try to, with my son, I offer things, toys-wise. That's what we always did when he was little. We offered things and just let him kind of pick and choose like what he likes, but you know him, he's very much a boy.
He's very boy. He's very boyish. Very traditional boy.
He's a t-shirt and jeans and dirty tennis shoes boy.
He's rough and tumble.
Exactly. But
he is so into cats.
Oh, he loves him some kitties. He's sensitive though. He's a sensitive boy, and we've always encouraged that.
Yeah, he's very sensitive. And he's like, when I say he's into cats, I mean, he has this game.
It's called Cats.
And he is obsessed with this cats game. Like, if he comes over, he's like, should I bring my cats game? If we go over to their house, hey, who's going to play cats with me?
He brought cats to Benedito's. That's a local pizza
restaurant. Joint. He's like, I got to have my emergency cats game at all times because someone might want to play a game about kitties with me.
It is Pictionary with cats.
It's really a fun game. I highly recommend it, but it's just funny that he's always obsessed with this cats game.
I've offered a couple of times though. Like he used to sit on the bathroom counter and watch me do my makeup because he was like, "What are you doing? Why are you painting on your face?" And I'm like, "You see this, and this is how you do that. And do you want to put some on?" And he was like, "No." I'm like, "Are you sure?" He goes, "Let me put it on your hand." And he, okay, but he never really wanted to do that. And I told him one time to, "Do you want to paint your nails?" And he's like, "Oh, I don't really feel like it." I offered, "Do you want to dye your hair?" I had some purple hair dye. He did dye his hair purple, and that was fun. That was the one and only time he did it. So I just like offer some things that I guess people normally, I don't know, boys wouldn't do, but I try. But he's a little boy.
I like that we're moving towards more like a society that's more comfortable with less rigidity when it comes to gender roles and gender in general. You know, I adore the idea that eventually we won't have those kinds of terms. Like, he's not a boy or a girl. Like, it would just be like, oh, he likes feminine things or things that are prettier, and she likes things that are more masculine. You know what I mean? Like, I don't... And then also, they like this and they like, you know... So we don't have such gender rigid
Not always having
boxes.
to put it in a box.
Yeah.
Yeah, a box, period.
And we're speaking from being in our mid-30s. We're not 20-somethings. That's why it's like, I would consider me like always half awake. Mm-hmm. I'm not quite woke. Because there are just life experiences that I have to work against. Mm-hmm. You know, ingrained ideas that I have to work against actively to be able to feel like I understand a point of view that I would not have understood 10 years ago because it would have been completely outrageous to me. So I'm working on it. We're always working on it.
We're always working on it. We don't got it figured out. It's not about figuring it out either.
Well, I think that's all we have for you today, and we're going to be pushing these episodes out, so I hope you keep continuing to come back each week.
Keep listening, guys. We might say something you might want to hear someday.
Maybe we'll even get a sponsor.
Yay!
Well, we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.